Hey, it's great to see you again. And if you are new to the channel, my name is Bill Benoist. I'm a certified professional career coach here in Silicon Valley. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little long because I'm actually doing an interview with a gentleman named Shan. So the background of this video, I did a video back in December on personality types. And I'll put a link to it in the upper right hand corner. But essentially, Shan wrote an email to me after this video posted, and he talked about how he was a subscriber to this channel, that he's in late career, and he wrote something that really caught my attention. What he wrote was, I'm a fit, active male in late career. I'm a subscriber to your channel. I saw your personality type video where you mentioned looking for subject matter. Bill, approximately 26% of the country is people you traditionally have not dealt with, yet they seek jobs more often than any other group. These people are neurodivergent. I have to admit, I had never even heard that term before, but this statistic of 26% really caught my attention, and I was doing a little bit of research on this, and I recognized this was a valid topic that I had never addressed on the channel, and I think it's one that's important, and I wanted to address it. But not really knowing anything about this subject matter, I wrote back to Shan and I asked him if he would like to come on to the channel and talk about this topic and actually do an interview with me, and he graciously accepted. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Shan, and let's dive into the topic of neurodivergent. So Shan, thank you so much for coming onto the channel. As I mentioned in the introduction, this was something that came about. I had done a video on personalities and you had reached out to me. In the video at the end of it, I talked about how I had talked with my VA and, was looking for subject matter, and she suggested, the personalities video. But you came out and you had sent me an email, and essentially, in fact, I'd like to just kind of read this email here just briefly. It says, I'm a fit male that's in late career. I'm subscribing to your channel. I saw your personality type video where you mentioned looking for another subject matter. Approximately 26% of the country is people you traditionally have not dealt with, and yet they seek jobs more often than any other group. These people are neurodivergent. It's not an area that I really have dealt with before. And when you say that 26% of individuals out there are probably the ones that are seeking jobs more often than any other group, I think it's definitely, an important subject to kind of talk about. So I invited you onto this channel, and you graciously accepted, and I thank you for that. I really do thank you for that.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting.
I'm sure I'm not the only person out there that has not heard of this term before, neurodivergent. And I've been in management for well over 25 years, and I'm sure I probably had some of these employees at one time or another. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what it is to be neurodivergent? What exactly does this mean?
Okay, well, there are two terms that are sort of the opposite of each other. The first is neurotypical. What is typical in a human brain? Pretty simple, but not really. Neurodivergent is what is atypical. What deviates from that norm? What is not typical? For me personally, that's ADHD. I have a form of ADHD called the combined type. However, there are a whole lot of different forms of neurodivergence, and I'm not really qualified to speak about any of them other than really what I have, except maybe in some basic statistics. 3% of the kids that were born in 2018 were diagnosed with autism before they even got to the first grade. What this means to an employer is that potentially 3% of the population that is going to be employed in the future will be dealing with autism. In the same year, 9.8% of the population from 3 to 17 had been officially diagnosed with ADHD. ADHD falls into three types: inattentive, hyperactive, which I'm more hyperactive than not. Inattentive is very common among girls, but it also in girls commonly goes undiagnosed. So what this means is that definitely for sure, 12.8% of the population that's out there is neurodivergent just in these two ways. From a survey done by the Department of Human Health and Human Services and the Department of Education in the United States, which seemed to indicate that more than half of all school districts are under-reporting and under-testing their kids. If this is true, then what that potentially means is that the number of ADHD kids that are actually out there is almost double what's known today. So if you think about that, if 10%, almost 10% are known in as ADHD, and maybe as much as twice as many are unknown yet, then what that means in the adult population that exists now today is we know that at least 10 to 20% of adults, somewhere between 1 in 10 and 2 in 10, who walk in the employer's door are neurodivergent.
That's interesting. That's real interesting. Now, you had mentioned also in your email that you were not diagnosed with this until later in life. I mean, what were some of the challenges that you faced up before the diagnosis?
Childhood is one of feeling different. Childhood is because for me, I'm hyperactive or impulsive, and because I'm also inattentive, I can miss communications unless I'm very intentional, unless I'm very focused. While that's a weakness or a negative aspect of ADHD, the converse of that is that one of ADHDers' superpowers is that we have the ability to concentrate intently more so than a neurotypical person. I basically was plodding along in junior high school in 9th grade, and just a completely unremarkable kid, doing my thing and having a good time. And one day, something caught my interest, and I began working for months and produced a science fair experiment with no parental help or input, and wound up my father's secretary had to type it. It was 64 pages. Document along with the presentation at the science fair. Here, this unremarkable kid who was seen as nerdy and sort of off-putting. I won the botany prize in the science fair. I won the biology prize in the science fair. I won the whole damn thing. And yet when I went to the county science fair and I had a panel of 3 people asking me about my project, this was in a gymnasium with 20, 30 other panels of people, around 100 or 200 other kids. The noise input became so overwhelming for me that I couldn't focus. And I literally, without saying anything, just left the interview. I was overwhelmed. And so overwhelmedness is something that can happen for ADHDers. You learn to sort of be a wallflower. Life is easier that way.
You said that your diagnosis didn't come until later in life. How's your life changed since then?
Well, diagnosis is only a first step. So usually when you're given this diagnosis late in life, one of the recommendations is that you seek counseling, which I did.
Okay.
And I attend counseling weekly. It's very helpful. But counseling alone isn't going to help you, because if you don't have an understanding of who you are, you can't really grow who you are. And if you can't have an understanding of what your strengths are, how are you going to accentuate them and use them to the best of your ability? So doing something of a personal inventory, and also listening to others and looking at literature about what high qualities ADHD people possess, is really important in helping to defeat the imposter syndrome kinds of feelings, where you feel like you don't belong where you are. When you walk into an interview room, you have to feel like you belong there. And part of your job there is to assess if the situation matches you, and then if it does, impart to that organization that you are worthy, that you are capable. So part of this is self-knowledge, and then part of it is also knowledge of the condition. So I learned quickly that the diet that I had, while healthy, wasn't healthy for my brain. There are certain kinds of food that can change how much dopamine's in your brain, and dopamine deficit is a part of this condition. Without dopamine, we get dopamine when we cross an item off a to-do list. We feel satisfaction for a moment. We get dopamine when we help a kid learn how to ride a bicycle. And for people with ADHD, it does not come as readily. The baseline level of dopamine in the brain isn't there. So taking supplements, I take a supplement called L-tyrosine, which is an amino acid. There's a wonderful channel by Dr. Daniel Amen on YouTube, and he is a psychiatrist who has done SPECT scans of more than 500,000 brains. And so he's able to see from looking at a picture of your brain what kind of ADHD you have. But he's also able to tell, if he puts you on a drug, whether or not your brain improves. So through his research, I learned that I could modify my nutrition. By modifying my nutrition, my sleep patterns changed. So for ADHD, people are often known to be late risers and night owls. And it's much more easy for me now to maintain a regular sort of 9 to 5, 8 to 4 kind of life. It's also made me feel lighter.
Before your diagnosis, did you ever have a sense of what kind of work that maybe you should be staying away from? And now, do you have that? And if not, do you have that now? In other words, do you have a little bit more clarity as to where you think you can excel, and jobs that maybe you just don't want to go after?
In my past life, I've recognized that when I got to wear many hats and my duties were varied, I was my best. When I was doing investigation or analysis, or taking data that I investigated and analyzed and synthesized it into a bigger picture, I was very effective and good, and actually sometimes quicker and more a different perspective than a neurotyp might have. Being in late career, I've also noticed that much of my career has been about learning new things that were on the edge. We were doing things in 2007 and 8 that people around the country weren't doing, and sharing that with younger people in their 20s and 30s at the time, and watching their excitement of being on at the head of something was just, it was deeply rewarding. I just watching them and knowing that what we were doing was good for people. We were working in sustainability, and knowing that was, participated in a more positive future. So for me, being able to analyze, synthesize, train, and be doing that in a field in which I believe, in something that I believe in.
I keep thinking about, there's probably a lot of people out there that are in this same boat that you are in, that you have been in right now, and they feel different. Maybe they what they're resonating with what you are saying. Do you have any advice for them?
I do, but it's not medical advice.
That's fine. I understand that.
Or legal advice. I want to be clear.
Okay.
I would say this. One of the things that I learned is that having a good, solid medical opinion is not just some doctor saying something. It's him having studied from a body of literature that describes medical conditions. And to me, ADHD or neurodivergence is a medical condition. And to me, that means that it's really important not to participate in any online surveys or any questionnaires or get dragged into a YouTube or Facebook short or listen to some TikTok diagnostics. Don't bother. Don't do it. Don't take comfort that you think you self-diagnosed. Don't bother. Because what I learned in my process was I suspected that actually I was autistic. That was my suspicion. That's what got me going. When we raised 3 kids late in life we fostered because one of their parents had a brain tumor, I got to see the benefits of trusting professionals to diagnose and to move them through treatment. And so when we finally had a moment or a space where I could do that for myself, I researched thoroughly who should be doing this. For the kids, we used a psychiatrist. But I found that for me, what fit best was something known as a forensic psychologist who specializes. Now, the guy I trust writes books. He's local to me. And he was just spot on. So my process was for a neuropsychiatric evaluation is a day where you go in for an hour to an hour and a half, and he asked questions in history, some of like what you've asked. But he's doing it, you don't realize it at the time, he's doing it from a perspective of trying to decide what test he thinks you should take to help guide him in understanding you. So at the end of this session, he made up a list of 14 tests that I had to take and assigned me to a day of testing a month later. I sat at testing, I think it was from 8 o'clock in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. There was a little break for lunch allowed. So pretty much 5 hours of testing. Part of this testing, or the size of the battery of testing, is to see how well you put up with the whole darn thing, not just the individual tests. Little did I know. But I reached frustration level 2 or 3 hours in. I was not a happy camper, and they knew it. The tests are challenging, and so he basically ordered 14. And a couple months later, he had formulated a report, and he sat down with my wife and I, and he basically began to tell my wife exactly who she was living with, and she just couldn't believe it. She was absolutely stunned at the accuracy of his description.
Wow.
And so I could have left myself under the impression that I was autistic without a diagnosis. And I could have just proceeded along the wrong path and wasted time. So for other people who feel they're neurodivergent and who have been tested and are looking, or have not been tested and are looking for work, I would say if you've not been tested, that defining your struggle is the most important thing you face, more so than getting a job. And I know, and we all need to eat, and we all need to pay rent or have a home, and that's more easily said than done. But prioritizing for neurodivergent people can be difficult. So prioritizing, understanding who you are, and then taking that to a career coach can be helpful. And I wonder if Bill's going to now have an ADHD career channel.
Shan, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really do. Don't know if that's going to be another encore career for me or not. I'm still thinking, about that. But hey, thank you so much for coming on. And this has been really fascinating. I just appreciate it. We'll talk to you offline a little bit if there's any links that you want to have. I'm sure we're going to have some links down in the description of this video once it publishes.